It's taken a long time, almost 5 years, I'd say, for us to arrive at the agreement which was signed at BRICS.
But getting closer between India and China actually has been something that the Taiwanese people and especially the government has been paying attention to.
And India has a strong suspicion that when it comes to implementation, they will drag their feet, they will delay it as much as possible.
They omitted any reference to Asia, whereas our Prime Minister did speak about multipolarity in Asia and the world.
While India has been trying to accomplish and in which it's making India project, Taiwan can contribute on the establishment of supply chains in different ICT sectors or subsectors.
Hello and welcome to Connected. I'm Divya Gopalan. So what you're seeing on your screen is a meeting between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, this took place on October 23rd at the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. This bilateral exchange is the first in 5 years and led to a pledge to resume dialogue between the world's two most populous nations. So, to understand the significance of this handshake for Taiwan and the rest of the world, we'll be speaking to Roger Liu, Assistant Professor at National Sun Yat-Sen University in Kaohsiung City. But first, let's get the ringside view from Delhi with Jayadeva Ranade, President of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy. He's also a member of India's National Security Advisory Board. Thank you, sir, for being with us. It's great to have you on the program. Now, to start off the show, we gave a very simplistic view of what's happened at BRICS and an idea of what's happened in the run-up. Could you give us a little bit more context on what's led to the frisson, which started at, or where it was set off on June 15, 2020 in Galwan, and give us some context on that?
Well, actually, it started in April 2020 when the Chinese troops moved out from their normal positions into areas where they hadn't come in Ladakh. And then we had to counter-build up. Galwan happened as a consequence of that. I think because of efforts by the Indian troops who were trying to dislodge the Chinese after having arrived at a settlement. But then there was a reaction where the Chinese used clubs, etc., with spikes on them, resulting in casualties. So that became, if I may say, a kind of a watershed where blood was shed and lives were lost after a long, long time. And that is why that has become a kind of a marker. And it's taken a long time, almost 5 years, I'd say, for us to arrive at the agreement which was signed at BRICS. That's in a nutshell what happened. But the Chinese, as you know, initially were unyielding. They didn't want to resile from the stated positions. In fact, they reasserted their claim on Ladakh and later on Arunachal. And Xi Jinping, as you would be aware, he at the 20th Party Congress, in fact, on the opening day, he screened a video clip of what happened at Galwan, which is unprecedented. They don't normally do such things. They don't, discuss these things at a party Congress. But obviously, Xi Jinping had set out to all the past, present and future Chinese Communist Party leadership his line on India and how he views this. So I think it was a difficult, difficult few years to negotiate. But I think finally there has been some kind of, if I may say, tentative tactical movement, positive movement on the border.
Okay, so before we delve into that tactical positive movement, as you say, let's delve deeper and let's hear what Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said on October 23rd after his meeting with the Chinese president at the BRICS summit in Russia.
हमारा मानना है कि भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए।
Now, as you mentioned, we know that there have been more than 30 rounds of military-to-military talks between the two sides, despite the political tensions. That there was a push for more negotiation. But what do we know about what's been agreed when it comes to disengagement with China along the border now?
Well, it's actually focused on a few points. The points are essentially Depsang Plains and in Demchok, both of where it was eyeball to eyeball, and Depsang Plains particularly is a very important area for us and I would say for the Chinese. So, and it's been there for a long time that we were not able to patrol up to the points we could. So that's been, I think it's a very positive and substantive development where they've started, according to the latest reports, actually moving back from where they were to the earlier positions. So that's a positive development.
What would you say is the immediate wider ramifications for the average person in India or China at this point in time? Or is there anything at all that your average person can take from this?
Well, first and foremost, the level of tension on the border has come down. And I think that's very important because the way they were deployed, their positioning was such that, there could be a flare-up at any time. I think that has been tackled. Second, the possibility of the patrols that go out clashing with each other or confronting each other, that has been reduced by the agreement to, inform each other of the movement of the patrols and when they're setting out, etc., and fixing the number. So I think these are positive signs. As far as the people are concerned, it would also mean that they could look forward to hopefully, reduction in the number of troops deployed on the border and more of a gap between the two. So I think these are positive signs.
Top levels in India, including the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, confirmed the step forward in diplomacy between the two countries. But there wasn't a joint statement, and China has remained largely silent. So we asked columnist Saibal Dasgupta, a former journalist in China and the author of Running with the Dragon, How India Should Do Business with China, why Beijing's response seems to be muted.
Look at the language. That not once did any Chinese spokesperson and the foreign ministry say that they are going to settle the border. In fact, the last statement came from the Chinese embassy in Delhi because that statement will not be reported to the domestic audience in China. That will be for the consumption of the Indian audience or the Indian government. China is continuously saying relevant problem has been discussed. Relevant problem is being settled. This relevant can cover the entire world without relevance. So they are not really addressing the issue. And India has a strong suspicion that when it comes to implementation, they will drag their feet, they will delay it as much as possible. So I still think that as far as Xi Jinping is concerned, this is an interim move, not as if he is going to resolve all the problems with India.
What's your take on the view that domestic politics is forcing China to limit its messaging on disengagement? And in your view, what other likely factor is there for China not to be so vocal about what's going on?
There are two things. I think one is they're keeping their options open for future, as the Chinese normally do. Secondly, they've also, I think by mentioning that, they believe in, they're trying to work towards multipolarity in the world, they omitted any reference to Asia, whereas our Prime Minister did speak about multipolarity in Asia and the world. Now, this is significant because the Chinese position, in fact, since the time of Mao in 1945, has been that they will be the sole security providers in Asia. In other words, they will dominate Asia, or what we now call the Indo-Pacific. So that's their intention. And, the implication of that is that they would also try and, as they say, quote unquote, recover all the territories that they lost. So the problem remains. And to address the third part of your question, I think there were domestic compulsions for the Chinese. Xi Jinping, to my mind, has been under considerable pressure over the last few years for two reasons. One, the pressure that has been brought to bear on him by the United States and Europe. There's a lot of uncertainty there. The Chinese, of course, have demonstrated that they're not, resiling from their aggressive posture, but still, there is a lot of uncertainty. I don't think they're ready to take on the United States. But secondly, their economy is in very bad shape. And I think one of the reasons for them to agree to this, resolution of the border is their economy being in a bad shape and their exports to the US and Europe having come down. So they're looking now to ensure that their access to India's market, which is the largest untapped market in the world today, remains easy and free. So that's been their effort. And if you read the Chinese ambassador statements here and the comments coming out from China, it's always been on, allowing, sort of introducing a degree of normalcy, allowing technicians to come in, allowing Chinese businessmen to come in, allowing journalists to access each other's countries, etc. So that's their game plan, and we are aware of that.
This may be premature, but is India's military reassessing its strategy yet, or looking at the border in a different way right now, its infrastructure or strategy at all, or is it just a wait and see at the moment?
Well, there is a build-up on our side, or shall I say an improvement on our side, of the defense infrastructure along the borders. That will continue, first. Second, our troop deployment, we'll wait and see what the Chinese are doing, how far back they pull back their troops, and then take a decision on thinning the deployments on our side. Because let's not forget, one of the main considerations will be trust, and that doesn't exist today. Thirdly, that's why I referred to de-escalation and de-induction. If they go back to where they were, even then we'll have to keep a higher level of troops deployed on our borders, because the infrastructure on their side is much better, and they'll be able to move in quite fast. So these are the considerations that we'll have. But of course, over time, if there are no hiccups, if things move smoothly, then there will be a reduction in troop strength, which will benefit the Chinese too, because they've been having problems in getting troops to move to the borders. Their soldiers don't want to go.
You mentioned trade and economic opportunity. So I'm going to put that to some numbers here with this coming up graphic. The economy plays a crucial role in India-China relations. Now, after the 2020 border clashes, India imposed a number of punitive measures against China, which include banning more than 100 Chinese apps and restricting China's presence in sensitive sectors. Despite this, though, bilateral trade has steadily increased. According to the Global Trade Research Initiative, China overtook in the US as India's largest trading partner for 2023 to 24, with the trade volume reaching $118.4 billion US dollars. So, we've seen tensions go up, but at the same time, we're also seeing, and then we've seen those punitive measures and restrictions put in place, but at the same time, trade is still going up. What do you make of that?
Well, it's firstly the action regarding the apps, etc., were done primarily on security grounds, because those do, collect a lot of data, personal data, and transmit them back to China. So that was the consideration there. Secondly, there has been a push within India, independent of China, to promote indigenous manufacturing and indigenous production. So that effort obviously is underway. And the third is that we want to be self-reliant as far as vital sectors of the industry is concerned. Now, this is going to take time, obviously. It's not going to happen straight away, because in many cases, we've just sort of allowed the Chinese to take over the production of certain things, which we had earlier. So that's something which will take, I would guess, about 5 years. But for the rise in this trade volume that we are seeing, there are certain major machining equipment that are private industry purchases from China because they're cheaper and the supplies are quite fast. So that's an issue which I think will get rectified to some extent over time as our capacity improves.
And speaking of the people's view from the ground, is there much appetite for loosening those restrictions, opening up, bringing those apps back? I know it's a security issue, but allowing Huawei to continue operating in India from the Indian base itself?
Well, there's a lot of push. I mean, if I may say, there's a lot of push from the business sectors, from the lobbies that are there, either because they're dependent on Chinese loans or on Huawei, etc., to survive and continue their business. That's one. The second is the pro-China groups here, which are also pushing for normalization of trade relations with China. As I mentioned earlier, that's the main focus as far as the Chinese are concerned, not the bilateral relationship overall. And I don't see the border being settled either in a hurry if they can get access to our markets. So this is what is going on here.
And finally, how do you envision India's long-term strategy when it comes to China? And in the same vein, then, when it comes to Taiwan or its pressure or Taiwan's relations or wanting to engage with India more, let's say?
Well, we are, I think, moving towards greater encouragement of the relationship with Taiwan. The focus is on the economic relationship. You are aware that Taiwan has opened a third office in India. Hopefully that will help them, because Bombay is a commercial capital. And that is, it's a positive sign. There are also other developments taking place in the relationship. We haven't yet gone to recognition, etc., for obvious reasons. But I think the relationship is progressing. It will be a steady pace, if not very fast.
All right, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much. It was great to speak to you, Jayadeva Ranade, President of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy, for joining us from Delhi. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as promised, let's get the perspective from Taiwan to break down what an India-China détente would mean for both cross-strait issues and Taiwan's international relations. And for this, we are joined by Roger Liu, Assistant Professor at the National Sun Yat-Sen University from South Taiwan's Kaohsiung City. And previously, Roger was an Associate Professor at Flame University in Pune, India. It's great to have you on the program, Roger. I want to bring Taiwan into the conversation. What does it mean for Taiwan if India and China are warming their relations between each other? Does that necessarily mean less support for Taiwan from India?
Well, that's a very key and good question that many people are asking and try to find out the answer. I will have to say the government of Taiwan has prepared for that. We hope and we believe in the near future, the good relationship between India and Taiwan will continue, because India will have to have the know-how and technology from Taiwan as well, especially if you notice the recent development that the PSMC and Tata has established a VC venture capital to manufacture some chips in Gujarat. So on the semiconductor side, India still needs Taiwan, and the business interactions between India and Taiwan has been growing for the recent years. So we are not afraid of the worsening of the relationship. But the getting closer between India and China actually has been something that the Taiwanese people and especially the government has been paying attention to.
All right, I want to put some of what you said in numbers, especially when it comes to the trade. Since June 2020, border clashes with China, India's trade and strategic engagement with Taiwan have grown. For the 2024 financial year, India's two-way trade with Taiwan stands at $10.1 billion US. But compare that to India's $118 billion trade with China. Meanwhile, Taiwan's two-way trade with China reached a staggering $224 billion US in 2023. Do you see India still able to, in both ways, India still able to engage Taiwan in the way it has been, and Taiwan being able to explore more opportunities in India if India and China are opening up dialogue and opening up their diplomacy?
Right. Of course, we are looking for the growing trading volume between India and Taiwan. But, when we talk about trade and commerce, sometimes we have to separate it from politics. Because, doing business with your rivals or doing trade with your even enemies exists in international relations. I think the big volume between Taiwan, India, and China for the trade is because of it's determined by the structure of the exports and imports. Well, India now has to import a lot of the machinery from China, and Taiwan has actually set up a supply chain in China. So the Taiwan-China trading volume is large because of that. Actually, that's the inter-supply chain trading volume. So that explains why the trading activity are taken up in China, between China, India, and Taiwan. But political-wise, I think we should look at it in the other way, because the relationship actually has been, the foreign relations and the relations between the two countries can be different.
On one hand, we're seeing China, or maybe it's cautious optimism, China diffusing tensions along the India-China border, but at the same time being more assertive with Taiwan. How do you read that?
If we talk about these two things separately, we can see that, the détente between India and China actually is a reflection of the business needs. And strategically, of course, China tried to use this détente with India as a leverage to kind of make a breakthrough towards their relationship with Quad countries. That's one thing. And the growing assertiveness of China towards Taiwan is because they are trying to pressurize Taiwan to accept some of the deals made by China. China now has been trying to form an encircling mechanism towards Taiwan, because very soon a lot of people are talking about the coming conflict with China from Taiwan. Because when China is fulfilling the China dream, Chairman Xi Jinping actually tried to reunify with Taiwan to tell the Chinese people that China is fulfilling this China dream. But putting it all together, actually, I think these two are related, because during the time of war, we will need the support from India. So the disengagement between Taiwan and between China and India actually is kind of good to help Taiwan, because now India can focus more on its strategic dispatch in the Indian Ocean region, and I think they can focus more on the Quad issues as well.
Yeah, you bring up the Quad, and I think that's one of the concerns here, especially for Washington, which was hoping that India would counter China's growing influence. Do you feel that this in turn then will change India's stance about countering China's influence? And then in that case, what does that mean for Taiwan's security?
I think the disengagement is temporarily. So it's used by both sides as tactics rather than strategy. Mm-hmm. Because if we look at, EAM Jaishankar has been mentioning many times, if China and India are going to have a détente or the improvement of bilateral relations, LAC affairs actually is something that they have to solve in the first place. So the disengagement actually is the key to peaceful bilateral relations along the LAC. But that's, like we said, based on the mutual needs. But structurally, we can see that, well, the border issue is hard to solve because, well, the border between India and China is quite long. It's like 3,000 something kilometers. So if we really want to fix that, there has to be a long series of talks between the two countries. And I don't think it's happening soon because the deals that made by each side actually cannot match each other.
And finally, where do you see India-Taiwan relations heading, regardless of what happens between India and China?
Well, I think the promising channel or avenue that India and China can work on to improve the bilateral relationship is on the technology part. So the collaboration between PSMC and Tata Group is a good start. And while India has been trying to accomplish and enrich its Make in India project, Taiwan can contribute on the establishment of supply chains in different ICT sectors or subsectors. For example, the production of chips. But at the same time, we realize that India need to strengthen its capacity on other parts of ICT supply chains so that a full ecological system of ICT supply chain can be established in India. And that will do good to different countries, including Taiwan. So I think Taiwan is really happy and willing to help on this part. And I think this is the promising side that India and China can develop their relations for the future to come.
Thank you very much, Roger Liu, Assistant Professor at National Sun Yat-Sen University, for joining us from Kaohsiung City. It was great to have your thoughts and insights, and for our viewers everywhere, it's been good to have your company. If you've enjoyed today's episode or have anything you'd like to add to the dialogue, do join the conversation on our social media. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.